It's the Vauxhall Comedy Club podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vauxhall Comedy Club podcast. My name is Mooch and I'm joined, as ever, by two esteemed comedians, Mr. Robin Banks and Horatio Gould. How are we, gents? You good?
I'm good. I'm glad to finally get on. I was actually quite, when I saw the first episode come out, I was like pissed off that I wasn't on the first step. And then I got message thinking I was on the second ep, and now I found out this is the fifth ep. So this, friends, is what's called scraping the barrel. This is what's left when you've run out of comedians in London. We are the bilge at the bottom of the barrel.
We haven't run out. We just have had a lot of no's this week.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Yeah.
You're not scraping the barrel. He asked me yesterday.
I asked both of you yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I was like,
we're both off the sub bench then.
Yeah, when we see
not
each
in a
other,
team
we're
or
like,
anything.
okay, yeah, this was a panic buy.
We're not even in the squad.
I don't think you understand how much I've got on my plate and how little I care
I
about
think
the things.
I think you're vlogging about it, mate. I think you're actually showing everyone how much we've got on a plate. It's nice.
Yes. Well, now that comedy's over, I actually don't have as much on a plate. But I have been refunding people a lot this week.
That's fun.
No, it's something I really hate refunding people. So if you have had a refund from me and it's in a nice, polite, jovial manner, please note that I have begrudgingly given you that refund because I feel I've already earned that money by selling you that ticket.
Yeah, exactly.
And we can't get the...
What's happening with comedy then?
Another sellout, was it?
Yeah, for the cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I don't know. We're having another meeting today. Maybe we can have comedy. We don't know. Essentially, technically we can't.
Yeah.
But we're going to look at ways of circumnavigating it because I don't think people give a fuck anymore, including the local authorities. We will see. I think they'll always be quite prudent and won't risk the license.
Yeah. That's the thing. Well, it's probably going to be some weird thing where it's like going to give you as much COVID as ever, but you'll have to hold your drink in your right hand. Or
Hold your
wear
breath while
shorts.
drinking.
Yeah, something like that. Then we might be able to have...
Have you had the vaccine yet?
I've had both.
You've had both?
Oh, wow, double whammy.
Got proof. I've got the dates with me.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's got his vaccine passport to be on the pod.
I don't really understand all this stuff.
Vaccines, podcasting.
I don't understand any of it. That's what you get. It's as simple as that.
It's a lot of cards, PJ.
Man's
They just give
okay.
you your dates.
Is that in an old Oyster card holder?
Your real name is Mohammed? Yeah, I haven't been offered it yet, and I'm pretty sure I hit the BMI sort of...
You've not been offered it yet?
No, I don't think so. How do you get it?
I don't know. I still need to register for a GP, so I'm hoping I'll just get one of those.
You shaved your moustache off.
I mean, that's sort of the thing you should notice first coming in, but yeah.
Exactly.
I was You shaved your moustache off.
Yeah, we both shaved them off.
You can do
Yeah.
observational comedy.
I'm taking it out on tour so everyone can see that I look better with a moustache, and then I'll put it back.
You
So-
really do.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? People give me shit for having a moustache because they're like, oh, so what's the idea behind it? They think I'm like some hipster ironic prick.
I think it's the glasses
Yeah, and
the,
you think,
and the
oh,
attitude as
who
well.
are you being sarcastic? Who are you making fun of by having this moustache? And I just want to show, no, it is hiding my snub nose.
weak lip.
Yeah, and a weak lip. So
it's
I'm gonna
like
take out-
it's like you've been burnt.
It's like a sort of shotgun. You know, that's
No, they're intimidating, and that is just embarrassing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like-
Well, that's why I'm taking. This is good actually. This is like it's almost like I'm promoting my book or my novel. I'm promoting
your
Why I
moustache.
Should I Have a Moustache, and it's just good to get it on camera. I'll go around.
We will
spend about
post-
3 weeks.
Can we? Is there a
do a
Snapchat sort of
close-up?
filter we can put so that we put a moustache on Horatio?
Well, people need to see. People need to see what they're working with.
Have you ever had facial hair, PJ?
Yep. Once I wanted to look like Chris Christopherson or another country western singer.
Can you pull up who Chris Christopherson is?
We're going to do a lot of this episode.
A lot of people I'm referring to are now dead, by the way.
So we were talking before the pod started about how long you've been going, and it's been how many years was it?
53, I'm 75 now, yeah, 22. I started that soon, I was 18, but I started getting paid
when I
when I was
started.
22.
That's crazy.
But I used to be a stuntman in between, that's how I really got started.
Was that your day job, being a stuntman?
Yeah, it basically was. That's where I started, really.
What have you been in any films or that?
Oh, yeah, I've done...
Like colour
this is
ones?
it. They're so old now, the Bond films, I did 3 of them.
Really?
3 Bond films?
Yeah, but you see, you've got to understand, back in the day then, I mean, I'm looking for it now because I'm doing decluttering in the house.
Yeah.
And keep coming across stuff that my kids have left behind and all that stuff. And I came across some videotapes of me back in the day, really back in the day, 30 odd years ago. One of them was 48 years ago, doing it. And I'm looking at it and looking at the stuff that I'm doing, the material and that. And all I'm thinking about is, fucking hell, I was a good looker. I really was.
You do that. I mean, like,
I really was a good looking geezer.
Well, but you're still a good looking geezer.
No, but I thought, I could have fucking pulled more than I did.
I think we all.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing.
I look back at photos, and there's always like a bit of a body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
Like you going, oh, cool. I wish I could have looked like this. But then.
But are you good looking, or are you relatively good looking to help?
No, I just think that your standards drop.
Yes.
And like, so I would have killed for the body I had at 22 now because I've really let myself go. And like where I wish to be, is at 22.
No, Mooch, I disagree. I think this is the right body for the job you're in. You're going for the kind of media mogul look. And if you think about True Geordie, Action Bronson, all these people, you want to be thick. You know, because it's more imposing.
Well, I was always. I don't think I don't. You didn't know me at 22, but I wasn't anorexic. But
Maybe we're talking about smaller margins.
Yeah, like I mean,
you can pull it off.
It's still thick, but it's thicker.
I think
the same length all the way through, rather than it tapering a little bit.
As opposed to losing weight, you should get big gold chains. That's the way
that
to sort of double down on
that
the
is
look,
that
I
is
feel.
that
How
could
old
be.
are you now?
24.
So you stopped growing?
Yeah, we're all done. it's shrinking now.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Stop growing. Can we do a little more?
No,
Can you
because
grow?
the fact is, at my
When did you start
height, I was
shrinking?
5'6.5". That was my tallest. I'm now 5'4.5".
Is it just going? Is it going to
You
keep
do-
going down from now?
You do have this bone shrinkage apparently.
I
It's the
think-
liquid in your spine, apparently.
I think I've
Disappears.
shrunk as well because I was 5'10", and now and I remember my dad telling me he was 5'10".
Mm-hmm.
My dad is definitely not 5'10" now, and I think I'm 5'9.5".
So it's that
Posture, do you
shrinkage in the
think?
spine.
Huh?
That is the cause of it, is it?
Apparently,
But
it's
they don't
like
slouch or
there's like
anything, no.
there's like when you're young, you got like liquid in your spine that kind of elongates it, and then as you get older, it just kind of compresses a bit.
I just thought it was general overall shrinkage. You know, going,
Well, everywhere.
yeah.
Also, you're taller in the morning than the
That
evening.
boat sailed.
You're taller and lighter in the morning than you are in the evening.
So that's something to think about. Do you know that, PJ?
No, I never heard.
When you wake up, you're the tallest you'll be all day.
You see, these kids today, this is what they listen to. Podcast.
What were you listening to at 24? What were you doing at 24?
I was
PJ?
listening to cassette tapes that we had. You know,
Cassettes?
Cassette tapes.
When you were 24, you had cassettes?
Yes. Yeah, we had cassette tapes.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, but okay. So this is
Maybe
actually an interesting question.
34. I've got something. I remember definitely we'd have an old gramophone. And
That's more like it.
And that Jailhouse Rock was the first
Look,
record I ever had.
I get phones are fucked and they've ruined everything. I get that. But I fail to imagine how people back in the day before phones, what did you do when you were doing nothing? You guys must have just done, like, an activity must have been doing
We went looking.
zero things.
As kids, you mean? Kids.
Even my age, or even as an adult, there must be periods where if you're waiting in a queue, like you must have a much better skill of literally doing nothing.
I do remember in the earlier days when queuing
Queuing.
was the norm.
What, as a hobby?
Just
You didn't have
queuing-
phones.
Just
You
like-
queued.
Fancy a queue?
This is what I
queuing
mean.
up to pay for your goods.
It's always
and
like
things
phones
that.
will ruin society.
And I
It's better than
can't
queuing.
remember exactly when suddenly this attitude at the bus stop of queuing went out the window. I think it started really.
You're queuing at the bus stop.
This is it. You used to queue at a bus stop and everything. And I think it was when I moved up to London and that you realised it was much more busier, that queues were less respected and it did become the norm.
And as a British person, queues are like it's in our nature.
It's like
it was.
from-
It's not now.
apart
It
from
might
at
be. It
pubs.
might now be.
I blame the foreigners.
Yes, I'm glad that. I wonder why you got all three of us together. I guess we do have some.
I'm a foreigner.
mutual-
I'm a.
Yeah, I mean, you've been riding that card hard.
Yeah.
The queuing business, I think, now has made a comeback because of COVID. Because I mean,
The business.
Because of my age and that, and I've got a bike and that, so I just go out riding. The COVID hasn't affected me at all. I just go, and of course I go straight to the front of the queue because I'm old. So I've got a flash and freedom pass. I'm straight in it. I don't have to worry about a queue. I'm privileged, you know, because I'm old.
Yeah.
I'm treated like a VIP.
I do think there is an old privilege that
That doesn't get talked about. Those
I
bastards
think
have
it's the
got
one
it.
that you've kind of earned, where you basically
sure.
you don't give a fuck anymore, and there are certain P's and Q's and etiquettes that you don't have to adhere to.
People who are rude to people older than them, it's like, you got to be playing this game. You're going to end up being older. You know, the more you fuck up now, it's going to come back to bite you in the arse. You know, is my thinking on it. But I don't think there's queuing in pubs anymore. I've noticed. Apparently in the
Well, there's no
UK
pubs anymore.
Yeah, well now obviously.
It's all table service now. I do think there are queues, but I think that queuing. There was a story about this where TfL said that you don't have to queue for buses anymore. I may be making this up.
Nobody does, because basically you've got bus stops, you know, with
Yeah, it'd be
seating
mad
and
if
that.
someone queued.
You've got people who come in that you can get 2 queues from. You go down to Brixton, you ain't going to see anybody queuing up down there because there's maybe 4 buses stopping at that one bus stop, and then there's another 3 further. Next bus stop further is.
So they're saying there's too many buses and not enough queues.
No, there never been enough buses. But the fact is, nobody. Look, people are standing in doorways. They're standing. They're even getting a coffee from the thing they're standing there drinking it, and they just leave it when they go. Brixton is just a mass of people on the pavement, and you can't tell who's talking, who's walking, and who's actually waiting for a bus. So when the bus comes, there's no thought of going forward and or excuse me or anything like that.
Yeah.
And what gets me most of all is the poor. I mean, I remember carrying my kids, you know, my arm, and I'm collapsing a pushchair and getting on. Today, again, it sounds like you're moaning. The thing what gets me is you can only get 2 pushchairs on a bus, and you see the people.
How many kids do you have?
No, I'm talking about the.
This is not crazy relatable.
But they
Go on.
can't get on the bus with if they've got more than 2 pushchairs. So basically, then everybody.
Or if
pushes
there's a
forward.
disabled who has priority. That's something I've seen
hasn't been
where
sorted. So that has
there's
not been
pushchairs
sorted.
and then there's a disabled person. It's kind of like
And if you've got a pregnant woman in the mix, then it's a real. What do you do?
that's a Mexican standoff
It is a Mexican
of
standoff.
of
and you have a Mexican there as well, and then it's a
pregnant Mexican.
Yeah,
The
then
simple
it's.
answer to that is basically it should always be the guy in the pushchair that gets on rather than the woman with the baby in the pram, because if it's the man in the the man in the pushchair, the
You're
man
saying
in
if,
the
if there's a man in a pram, he clearly has a lot more problems than a baby in a pram. Because if you're a baby in a pram, that's acceptable. If you're a 45-year-old
I love
dude
this-
in a pram,
this-
you get a spot because there's clearly much deeper things.
We don't
going
kink
wrong.
shame here. If you're a grown baby, you're allowed
Absolutely.
on the bus. It
we
should
need
be first
more
come-
space for
Kind of
grown men in prams. We've been saying the same thing, PJ.
No, entirely. You're missing the point. The point I'm
No,
getting to.
as you're saying,
the point I'm
men
getting
with
to
dummies
is
in their
this.
mouths in
The
prams.
man in the wheelchair should always get priority over the woman with the baby in the pushchair.
What, because they're a man?
No, I'm coming to it.
I'm just
You know, you're getting heckled now. You know.
yeah, we're heckling on a
Once.
podcast.
Yeah.
Basically,
good
because if you let the man in the wheelchair get on, it gets rid of that fucking stupid statement that comes on when it's a woman with a pram in there of "please don't leave your child unattended." You know, as if any mother is going to forget they've just managed to get on the bloody bus with the pushchair.
Yeah.
And this stupid announcement. Have you not heard it?
No.
It comes
David
out-
Cameron did it.
As soon as they
David
leave the
Cameron left his
pushchair-
baby on the top of the roof and drove all the way to a festival.
It happened.
But
I've
did you
heard.
not know that they
No,
actually
I made that up.
this computerised announcement comes on.
I believe that
Please
straight
do
away.
not leave your baby unattended. As if anybody would do that kind of thing.
PJ, worryingly, because they've got the announcement, I feel people have left their baby on it.
It also says don't drink on bleach, so you know it's sort of the same thing.
Actually, that gets us onto Big Brother thing, which is one thing I'm very aware of. Is you get on
The show or the
you
concept.
get well, there's Big Brother everywhere, isn't there? God knows what he's going to do with this now after this.
Yeah,
He's gonna
these
come back
days.
to haunt me in the twilight years of my comedy career. No idea, just to give it a boost. But you get all these announcements on there, like there's room upstairs. Please take seats vacant upstairs. You think it's not the driver saying it. It's this disembodied female voice. It's always a female, by the way, isn't it? If you notice that. Always a female.
So you're not like being
More
told what to do.
calming.
Not my
woman.
female constantly. It's the same woman all the time. She gets everywhere. You notice that?
Yeah,
Don't.
She must be
don't-
exhausted.
Yeah. We're gonna start discussing some of the weird and wonderful internet stories that we've amassed this week.
Please.
Because that's what we do. Here we talk nonsense about the problems with the UK queuing system. Too many female voices on buses, not enough in comedy. And
nice. I mean, nice to say it on a podcast without any women. I like that. So.
We've had loads. We've had 2 women on these podcasts. There's been a knock-on effect from the Suez Canal fiasco, in that there is now a shortage of gnomes and sex toys here in the UK.
Yeah, those fake arses.
Have you seen these, PJ?
Well, I'd like to remind you, I'm decluttering.
Exactly, yeah. It's true. For hoarding.
Things I'm coming across.
Yeah.
So, the Suez Canal blockage leaves Europe without garden gnomes and sex toys, which were I knew there was going to be a shortage of something. I knew there was a shortage of...
But because in my head, I'm imagining one of those giant tankers. In my head, that's what the whole thing is. It's just the whole cargo ship is filled with asses and gnomes. That's how they seem to be selling the story.
Well, I mean, you've got a specific sex toy in your head. I was assuming it would be dildos because there seems to be a bit of a stigma when it comes to male sex toys.
Oh, yeah?
So if you go around to a lady's and she has a drawer of sex toys, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, if you go to a man...
And he's got a drawer of rubber
paint,
pussies.
whips, yeah, it's not cool.
It's kind of like, okay, cool, have.
The dildo
issues.
is a sign of female empowerment, but the fleshlight is a sign of you're potentially going to be a school shooter. So it's like 2 different sides.
I do think it's changing. School shooters are now becoming more diverse, and
I'm very glad to see it as well. Terrorists are getting more diverse as well.
Well, it's another...
a lot more white terrorists.
There's too many.
There's too many because now white terror. I'd say we're the kind of the main terrorists at the moment. So
I think white terrorists in America are number 1.
Exactly. So we're back on top. It was a long period where we were kind of in the lower league.
Yeah.
But once again,
the
whites are right. Is what they say.
How do we segue from dildos and gnomes?
It's one of my main skills. That's why I'm on the pod. It's aggressively segueing towards uncomfortable racial topics. Anyway, you shoot.
Speaking of uncomfortable racial topics, it's White Boy Summer, which is one of the reasons why I got all 3 of us on this podcast.
White Boy Summer.
White Boy Summer is what's coming up, PJ.
The White Boy Summer you're thinking of. We're not
basically, this is the progression of White Boy. Before White Boy Summer, during White Boy Summer, after White Boy Summer. I don't know. So this is Chet Hanks, and this is...
Oh my goodness me.
So that's Tom Hanks' son, everyone's favourite.
Yep.
Nation sweetheart. Well, I was trying to recontextualise white as we've kind of given up and we're like accepting our status as being a joke. And that's what I quite like about White Boy Summer is it's like...
I've ordered some merch.
Yeah?
I've got a couple of caps. I've got Black Queen Summer and White Boy Summer.
I think it's going to be a White Boy Summer for sure.
Why is this summer White Boy Summer?
It's something Chet Hanks has made up, which there are rules to it, I'm sure. It's kind of like the 10 Crack Commandments.
We need rules, because last time it was White Boy Summer, Hitler invaded Poland, so it's like... You know what I mean? Like, you've got to have strong ground rules, because it's fun now. But
I think there were rules then, but I think we should have different rules.
Yeah, but it's just like people are maybe just about starting to maybe trust us to have a bit of fun again, but... We can't be trusted. We need serious rules.
Yeah,
it can get out of hand very easily.
Because aren't we in the minority now? Apparently,
no, not in this country.
Not.
I mean, in the
according
world,
to some websites.
In the world,
according to some websites, yes, we are the minority.
I mean, they're always trotting out now.
I think the Chinese are probably the majority, followed by the Indians or Southeast Asians. Asia is the majority,
far.
And then I'm not sure.
But yeah, in this country, certainly not.
Yeah, I think we're 80-90% in this country still. I'm not sure. I haven't counted recently.
But what are your feelings on White Boy Summer then?
It's a bit of fun, and I hope it doesn't turn racist.
But that's almost what's the fun of the game is you just don't know. Could be the end because it doesn't end well normally.
Yeah, so it's a bit of fun. I'm getting behind it. I'm amazed at how Chet Hanks has parlayed ridiculousness into. Do you think he knows it's all a bit of a joke, or do you think he is a little bit? Because
It's a great question because I mean, I saw a post on the internet saying that Chet Hanks and his brother Colin Hanks are like an argument for nominal determinism, which basically says what your name is decides who you are. Because they've both got the same dad. One's called Colin, most straight-laced actor you've ever seen.
Yep.
Do you have a picture of Colin by any chance?
I'm just searching.
There we are. He's on it. And then Chet Hanks is the biggest Chet you've ever seen. So it's very hard. I feel it's his wires are completely crossed where he doesn't even know if it's a joke or not. He's in a different reality right now. So I think it's even hard for him to understand.
I think it really depends. Have they both got the same mother?
yes,
They
I
do.
think they do.
And look, this is Colin, who looks like a Colin.
Wow.
And then Chet.
Colin
who
looks
like
like
a
the guy from not Reno 99. What's that police TV show with?
You're doing references too young for him, and you're doing references too old for me, which is like that's why it's like a
Brooklyn
nice...
Nine-Nine.
Oh, okay. Very
If you go back to Colin,
yes.
There is a major difference, huh?
yeah,
Yes.
he looks like that guy from, or is that the guy from Brooklyn
I
Nine-Nine?
don't think it is.
What's
Is
the
Colin?
difference in ages?
I'm not sure.
It looks like quite a gap.
Yeah, I think Colin's probably older. He dresses like a 40-year-old man. If you do that with a different screen,
He's 43.
43, and
As opposed to what?
Chet must be in his 20s.
Chet's 30. That's 13 years. That's why.
There you
That's
go.
because they had a kid. Let's raise him. Then you do that once because it's fun. You're a celebrity. You don't have to raise a kid again 13 years later. They just didn't do it the next time round. That's understandable.
Don't forget the analogy about being the second child. The first one gets all the attention and all that kind of thing.
Which number child were you?
Huh?
Which number child were you?
It was I was in the middle, yeah. That was my sister 4 years older and my brother 11 months younger. And that's another thing that I mean, all my parents are dead. I'm an orphan now in the sense that there's nobody living relatives of mine alive. But I've always wondered about it because my mother was a fervent bog Irish Roman Catholic who believed in the Lord. And, you know, if you having a bet on a horse and it lost, it was your fault. If the horse won, it was God looking after you. Couldn't, you know. And yeah, I've
easy
still
going.
never been able to figure out how my brother and I were 11 months apart. And of course, it being Patrick, he was born on St. Patrick's Day, so he became Patrick. I became Peter because upon this rock I will build my church, that kind of thing. But I'm trying to figure out 11 months. There's 2 months in between. Was my dad, you know, one of these sex maniacs, you know?
I think
give
so,
him
yeah.
threats?
Has the
Or
apple
was-
fallen
Conclusion.
far from the tree?
Exactly.
Huh?
Has the apple fallen far from the tree?
Well, to go back to those videos I had when I was doing
That is a
comedy,
good question though. 2 months.
There
So
was
it's,
a finalist of the Osmonton Bay Beauty Queen competition that I was the entertainment manager, and there was 12 finalists, and percentage-wise, I did all right.
You did all
yeah.
right.
You know,
Could have done
Over
better.
over
Looking
the-
back,
over
you
the-
think you could have done
over
better.
the 16 weeks of the summer season that I did.
I mean, you've got 2, 3 kids?
I got 4.
4.
Mark on my birthday, 40. Luke, 37.
John,
Jenny, 34. And Matthew, 30.
Are you quite religious? Because they're, I
Huh?
mean, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Jenny.
Yeah, John died before he was born, so Luke
Oh,
came
God.
next one up. But yes, I mean, basically, all I did, I didn't pick biblical or anything like that. I just thought straight away, I'm going to pick names that can't be bastardised or mucked about with in school.
I wish my
And
parents
it
were the
worked
same.
fine.
We've got Horatio here.
But my dad's called John, so I wish that they just stuck with that, and that would have been so much easier. You
So
know,
what are you doing?
Horatio.
Why?
Don't fucking ask me. Why are you asking me as if I have any?
Well,
This
there
is
must
like
be-
one thing
I'm
This is one
sorry.
thing you have no
Excuse
help.
me, you're 22 now,
Yeah.
and you haven't pinned your father down about was there anything relative to Horatio Nelson or anything like that? Have you not found out any of your origins?
No, I know that the origins is because they liked the name. They thought it was a
That there wasn't any what it stood for.
well. What
Yeah,
it stands for, I guess it's kind of a.
English
They
hero.
know about Horatio Nelson stuff,
Yeah,
but that's not. I wasn't named after him.
All right.
Did you get much torturing at school, Horatio?
Surprisingly, I mean, fellatio only came in later.
I do. Where's my pint?
I'll get it after.
This is the only reason he's here. He's
find
absolutely
out?
livid.
Yeah, I do because I haven't had one at all since the lockdown at all.
You haven't drunk at all.
No, not out and about. No, at all.
Or you've been sinking cans.
Actually, no, because don't forget, if I want to go to a pub at the moment
Yeah.
and ask for a drink, they go, "How many of you are there?" And you go, "1," and they go, "Sorry, mate," because they don't want to give a table up.
Yeah, that's.
So being on your own is a
So
stigma. now.
you want
Right
you
now.
want your own pint.
And then you've got to book in advance and all this, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to do all that.
You go
And
grab
I don't want to go at the last minute.
What do you have in a Stella?
I'll have a Stella, please.
Stella,
And this
do
is
you
an
want a
ideal.
pint?
I'll have a pint, sure.
Now this is an
you
ideal
having a pint?
situation.
Sorry.
Well, are you having a pint, Mooch?
I'm not drinking at the moment.
Now,
Okay, well, I can leave. I'll leave a pint. Don't worry.
Mooch. No, you get it. Now, you see, this will go down the annals of comedy history.
What, this
I'll write
this
the
pod
book,
or
because
this?
I will talk about the tribulations of the COVID, and I'll be able to remember quite clearly. And the company I was in, very highly valued esteemed company, when I had my first pint.
It'll be on.
after
It'll be
COVID.
on video.
And it will be with two buddies in the comedy world, sitting at a table, having a fag.
Doing your first podcast. Is your
Yeah,
first
this is
Yeah.
quite a big day actually. That's your first pint since
So
lockdown
we
and
had
your
the
first pod.
Drink. I got my cigarette. We're doing the virginal podcast. I've never had it up the arse.
I mean, it works in that order. So, how many topics we got before it's going to have
we
to
get
be
down
up
to
the arse?
The
the
next one was, have you had it up the arse?
arse.
Actually,
Yeah.
so that is really, you've never had? Have you given up the arse?
No, yes, I was on one of these Christmas specials at a holiday camp. Sign Warren it was, and there was a girl on female cabaret act. She was a magician.
And she made it disappear.
And yeah, we went back to her place, and she just said, I've got the periods, so I just want to take it up the arse. And I'd heard about it. I was that naive still even those days. And I just thought, and afterwards, I'm afraid there was evidence where I'd been, which I thought was,
Of the murder, or?
no, just a ring.
Oh, okay. This is not how I expected this podcast to go.
This is exactly how I expected this podcast to go. This is exactly how I expected this podcast to go.
So, Horatio, have you given it up the butt?
I have not actually. But
You're only 24, though.
only 24. There's plenty of
Are
time.
we still talking about the arse?
Yeah.
So you said buff.
But.
But.
What in the
Please
butt?
enunciate clearly.
Yeah,
will.
especially when you're talking
Yes.
about anal. Let's enunciate. Make sure that everyone gets every single word.
Yeah, it's more awkward, I find, than pleasurable.
Yeah, let's keep talking about anal. I think definitely. I think this is white boy summer.
It is a white boy summer.
Mm-hmm.
So what else have we got on the? I don't want to sort of go into any news stories because Scott is out getting
Okay.
a pint.
But how have things been here at the club? What are your feelings towards what's happening? Like
What is
it opening
happening?
up.
It's very confusing.
Yeah.
Two things we've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, we were told you can do comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we actually weren't told you can do comedy, which is probably where a lot of people have. But we were told you can be drinking outdoors from April 12th, and we assumed we'd be able to put on events outdoors. So we're not talking with social distancing.
Yeah.
And last week or a week before, the LCA sent out an email basically showing that certain events were saying comedy probably wasn't going to be able to happen because there's some stipulations. So if everyone arrives at the same time, I think that's one of the stipulations.
Are we talking about your club or just generally any outdoor?
Generally, any outdoor. So basically, if you all arrive at the same time, and if there's a focal point for music, or it gives an example of musical theatre, musicals or theatre.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, you can't do musical theatre. But it's very vague. But a lot of people are interpreting it as comedy can't happen.
But I mean, it's gonna come. It's annoying, but it's gonna come in the next month or so. But how do you feel about the future of it in the next year as a club owner? What's the feeling amongst club? Or is it just completely we really just don't know until it starts going?
Well, the thing is,
Because I thought it was all right. Sorry to interrupt. I thought it was all right in the gap between them. It did bounce back pretty well, I thought. And
Yeah,
this club did pretty well.
I think people want to go out, and
Comedy's cheap.
Comedy is cheap, and it's a nice form of entertainment. You can't go clubbing.
Yeah.
Going to the pub is the same every single time. If you're not into theatre or something like that, it's a nice option.
Yeah,
It's a
no
nice-
one's into theatre anymore, anyway.
Well, yeah.
Exactly. Because that's the thing is that comedy doesn't need, is not classed an art form because it doesn't need grants because it pays for itself. It's like local theatre that's going
Yeah.
to get fucked because no one is. Local theatre is super important, but everyone hates it, and that's the problem. You know,
Is local theatre super
no
important?
local theatre. You need that's the conundrum in local theatre. You need it because people need it,
Yeah.
but the problem is. It is inherently shit. So how do you
But I
square
suppose
that
it's
circle?
kind of like-
oh, thank you so
it's
much. mate.
essentially,
Thank you.
Said you didn't
cheers.
want one, remember?
Well, you can have mine if you want.
Essentially, it's
See, you got a better top up as well, didn't you? Look.
Cheers, PJ.
Oops.
let's
It goes the long way around. I like it.
God bless you.
Fair enough.
Um,
Bless you, mate.
so yeah, maybe local theatre is
Moment to save.
This is the moment.
close up on PJ, please.
Yeah, it's still got the magic.
Yeah.
We were talking about local theatre, how it's the open mic of theatre.
Now, this is a very interesting point what you just said, because back in the day, the Bedford, when it was the Bedford, and then just...
Is that what Banana Cabaret is?
Yeah.
But this was when it's under just landlords, individual people, not like a big company like it is now. And I had a venue upstairs in Tavistock Room on a Wednesday, and the capacity of about 50 people in there, maximum. And suddenly this theatre group, as you said, came along, and they got grants and that, and they did the whole place up the room, and they were charging like £10, £15 for a 45-minute play. Mm-hmm. And I went and saw a couple of them, and I just couldn't get my head around it at all.
But it's not for you.
But the people that came...
For them.
No, but the people that came, sometimes there'd be 8 people there, sometimes there'd be 30, 40 people. And they were prepared to pay £10, £15. And I thought, I can understand that in Edinburgh, but down here, why would you pay for a 45 minutes, an hour and a half, 2 hours? Yeah, fine. So I never got my head around this theatre business going on. And then they were all asking for grants, and they got them, didn't they, during this pandemic, haven't they?
They need them, but I think theatre's more like, it's like going for a run. It's like, people don't like doing it, but you've got to do it. It's like doing your duty. It's like voting. It's like doing jury service. You should go see a shit play every once in a while, because people need to...
Realise.
The people on stage...
I get
need to do their shit play. Comedy, you do it because it's fun. If you don't
And
like
also
it, don't
comedy,
come.
have got minimum overheads. I mean, in
Comedy
the
is
end,
low
all you
overheads,
need
cheap.
to do is, if you're doing a door split, whatever, fine. If you're paying the acts, you work it out exactly what you do. You know how many tickets you got to sell. It's quite simple. The comedians just turn up, basically. Which that reminds me, I don't know how we ever managed back in the day without phones and that because
You had to call people up and stuff.
well, no, I mean I can remember Lee Evans.
I mean, you
for
still
example.
call me up, actually.
Lee
That's
Evans
the
was
way you-
absolutely manic. I did a gig with him once in Wales, and we got there, and this is how ditzy he was. He just said, roll the window down, ask this bloke where this is, and he gave me a piece of paper, and it had on there, Comedy Club Wales.
Unbelievable.
That's all it had. But he would always, because he was so popular and in such demand, and Jack D the same, that Lee would hardly ever turn up on time. And you'd have no idea when he was turning up. So quite often you'd have a kind of lock-in, because he was getting such a name at the time. People were prepared to say the public would be allowed to serve quietly under the counter. And he'd turn up maybe 11:30, 12 o'clock to do a gig.
Is that why he was always sweating?
No,
He'd run
he's a
for the gig.
natural. He's a natural perspirer.
Natural perspirer, yeah.
Gallons come out of him, kind
Yeah.
of thing. But if an act didn't turn up, you had no idea what was happening, because nobody would get hold of you to phone you and that. And I can remember when the first mobile phones came out, there was a guy called Clyde West, and he was okay, but he had delusions of how good he was.
Of grandeur.
And one day, and he wanted to get on later and later on the shows, in a sense, as if he was some sort of headliner. And one day I was doing the Red Line in Streatham, which is obviously the police station, and he phoned up and he said to me on their phone, the pub phone, and he said, I can't make it, I'm stuck, I could be along to do the second half and all that. And I just said, well, it ain't going to take you that long to get out of your fucking car, because I'm going to see you across the road from the window. We have one of those real big box phones that you had in those days, kind of thing. And that's when it started. Everybody started playing little games and that, and to try and double up and all that. That was the first start of the negative side of what happens when you have development in other things. There's also yin and a yang with phones, and you get it today with people on the phone all the time, don't you? Trying it on.
So
The gum.
I was going to say, I'm trying to remember where there was what the name of it was, but do you know Studio 338?
No.
Yeah.
Is it a venue?
Yeah, in Greenwich.
Okay.
Big house and techno venue.
Okay.
But that used to be a comedy club.
Oh, really?
Like, it was called the House and Terrace by the Blackwall Tunnel. Do you remember what that was
I
called?
remember that. I think they're talking about the Tunnel Club.
The Tunnel Club. That was, it was the Tunnel Club. And
Is this
that's
the
where.
spot?
That's it now. Yeah.
If that was a comedy gig, fuck.
Well, but it's that, that's it now. But that's where,
It was so fast, I can never remember, how you'd ever get out of there.
but it's where like Alexi Sale, a lot of the alternative comics sort of started
the
up.
No,
80s?
not Alexi.
So you never do it.
No, Alexi Sale?
He might have done the odd guest, but he wasn't a regular. Malcolm Hardy was the...
Malcolm no, that was up the creek.
No, that was the Tunnel Club.
Was that the Tunnel Club? Okay.
Malcolm
I bow
Hardy.
down to your great knowledge. If you just Google the Tunnel Club,
You might see an old picture of it.
and we'll bring that up. But yeah, so I was reading an article about the sort of the history of the comedy over there, and it's kind of when Edinburgh was in its infancy for comedy.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe do you remember the Tunnel Club? Where were the old haunts back in the day?
The very first place it started was the comedy store number 1. There's now been 3. The third one at the moment is closed. That was at the top of Paul Raymond's Review Bar. That's where Alexis was a regular compare. And you'd get into a lift, and you could only get 4 people in the lift at the maximum at the time. So people had to go up to this lift, the cage door and all that, to get out to go to the comedy. That was the first one going. Then there was downstairs at the King's Head. That started
That's
about
still
the same
going.
time
Still
as
going.
the
It's
Tunnel
got to
Club.
call to get a spot there. It's like
not,
old school.
It hasn't changed its name.
It's
No, you
downstairs
have
at
to-
the
you
King's
have to-
Head, and you have to call to get a spot, which is the only club.
You've only got 2 hours.
It's only 2 hours because it's before he works. It's between 9 and 11.
That's
Is
Pete
that
Graham
he was doing that at the same
Pete
time?
Graham, yeah. He's even I have to I say it's PJ. I'm still alive. Yeah, I've made
That's
it
probably
through.
the longest running
And
club
he-
night in London, probably downstairs at King's Head.
Probably, I'd imagine so.
I
yeah.
would imagine that was the first runner. Then it was followed
Runner?
by
What's a runner?
Huh?
What's a runner?
the first runner of comedy in sense of in London.
Oh,
After the
okay.
Comedy Store, and the Tunnel was going at the same time, and then you got Har Bloody Har. That was about 2 years later, and the Bedford about the same time. Bedford's been going about 36 years.
Junglers is back.
Yeah.
Oh my
Well,
God,
that's
isn't it?
Junglers is back. It's different people.
So I have some questions about jonglers because I hear a mixture of when you meet old comics on the circuit, you hear a mixture of like they stole money, they cheated, they're clearly going to go down. There was a criminal enterprise, but then also it represents the kind of golden era of live comedy where fairly average acts could make £400 on a weekend when £400 was £1,000 now. Like you do like 4 shows
No,
and
more
you'd get
than that.
paid for
Person
like
who had the
200 for
record,
20 minutes.
Bob Mills had the record for doing 6 in one night.
Yeah, and you get paid like ridiculous amount of money for it.
You
So
had-
why did
you
you
used to-
recoil at the idea of jonglers? Because it does seem like it paid.
Because it was almost the comedy equivalent. I was talking to my son earlier today about this whole new business with the football that's happening.
So it was like the European, it was the European Super League of
I could see
comedy.
the parallel runs running alongside it, same sort of thing. And basically, like football is, started by people kicking the ball around and then became clubs, and that although some of those clubs gone to the wall, nobody gives any money back to it as such. Same with the comedy clubs. Nobody gives any money back to the comedy clubs that started, and without them, where do you go? But why we call it jonglers is because basically they rip people off left, right and centre.
That's what I heard.
People didn't get paid for 3 or 4 months. I'll tell you a straightforward story about me doing jonglers. I did it 4 times. I stormed it every time because it was easy.
It was like
You didn't have to- you
Hindus
didn't have to
type
do anything
crowd.
clever.
It was like a raucous Hindu-y crowd, wasn't it?
Yeah, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And that's a piece of piss for me because that's how I started. You
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah.
kind of thing. But because I've come, and I had the same problem with the Comedy Store, and the same problem with some of the old acts, like he's gone now, Cognito.
Incognito.
People would come up to me and more or less say, Tony Allen, back in the day, would more or less come up to me and say, what are you doing here? Fuck off, you've had your shot at the title, you've had your chance. This is our turn now. Fuck off, you don't belong here.
What, younger comics?
Yeah, because I came from mainstream, and because I was older than them, obviously.
Mainstream?
Because that's all we had. This is the new burning
Alternative comedy.
Alternative comedy.
Was this the late 80s? Just trying to work out the
No, I think
chronology of it.
Comedy Store's been going. Yeah.
But it wasn't like the kind of
early 80s.
the alternative comedy. Or maybe it was like, oh yeah, it was like the Thatcher era.
Wait a minute. Just because I found those old tapes. Yeah, I've got me at the Comedy Store doing 20 minutes at the Comedy Store. First time I did the first 20, and that was 87.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bring those tapes in and we'll
but
digitise
I'd
it.
I tell you what, that'd be great, because I could send them along to somebody, then chat up and they'll go, you look nothing like you. But I've got stuff that you'd be interested to see, because you can get shots of them on the on YouTube and all that. But I've got full tapes of Just for Laughs from 30 years ago. People on there, Richard Belzer and other comedians who were bigger before the ones that they go on about now, like Chappelle.
Yeah.
They were the Berry Chappelle.
Bold statement.
A lot of the black comedians that came through from America, all they did was go on there and take bits of what they did it, the whites did it in a sense, and did it from a black angle, and pushed it a bit harder and threw in the odd race comment in reverse and got big laughs because they were black and they could get away with it, like talking about there's one joke I remember, Chappelle I think it did it. If I'm going on too long, just tell me.
No, please. I'm here to learn.
He did this joke, I think it's Chappelle, and he's going on about this black guy was done for killing a dog or something like that. Either 3 months or something.
I think you're talking about...
all you had to do was go and shoot a white girl, like what A.J. Simpson did, and you get off. So he's basically saying, kill a white girl and you get off, but you kill a dog and you go to prison.
Yeah.
And to me, there's a lot of stuff like that, but don't get me going.
That's still kind of... I think that's a right bit, hearing it.
Is it
secondhand.
Michael Vicks? Was that the thing we're talking about with the?
I think that is.
Yeah.
I was... Because you have 50 years of experience, how do you... I know it's quite a broad question, but what are the biggest changes that you would think for a comic starting at 18 now to when you started at 18? What year did you start when you were 18? Must have been like...
Born in 1946, so we're talking about 68, wasn't I? I started...
1968. So what was the scene like in 68?
My main thing was doing stunt work and all that, getting paid.
But when you were doing gigs on the circuit in 1968, what does the UK comedy scene look like? Because as far as from the rudimentary knowledge I have of British comedy history, it was like, at that point, it was still probably working men's clubs, the folk scene.
All you had, basically... If you started, when I was starting, you had the Truman Talent Trail, where you go in a pub, and Talent Trail, and they would get 3 songs, and you would get 8 minutes stand-up comedy. And if you won that, you'd be in the final. And then there was nowhere in between. All you could do from that stage then was to go and become a blue coat or a red coat or something like that. That's all you had. You have no way in between. And if you wanted to make a living, you had to jump from the 8 minutes you had to 45.
Really?
Or an hour if you were a compare. And then all you
But what
had
would a 45 mean then?
Huh?
What would a 45 minute even mean then? Is that like 45 minutes of jokes, gags, no story?
If you were doing the working men's clubs, like I've still got contracts, and this is where you come onto the money aspect, of in Staffordshire, the potteries and that, I did at social clubs up there. And I've got contracts saying £100, £200 back then. For doing a 45-minute set.
Well, back then that's like $2,000. Like
Yes, I mean,
that's
exactly,
crazy.
that's the whole point.
But I suppose there's always less comedians.
Yeah, I mean, back then. I mean, I saw an interesting thing with like the first impressionist, who's not like a great impressionist, but he's the first one to do it, so he's like a legend of the game. I forgot actually what his name was, but I'm sure that kind of happened a lot in comedy. Was there were so few acts, and also I
No, there wasn't so few. There's plenty of acts, but the thing is, you could. I mean, there's a mainstream act. Basically, you're talking about me jumping onto doing stuff like End of the Pier shows with the Black Abbots, Russ Abbott, Jim Davidson very early, Freddie Starr very early before he hit the drugs and all that.
Was Jim
And all
Davidson
you could
always?
Huh?
Was Jim Davis always so politically obnoxious?
Well, let's put it this way. This is a story. The guy's dead now, so I can't be sued by the bugger. But his manager was a guy called Wally Dent.
Yeah.
And Wally Dent met me when I gate crashed the telethon. And I turned up there with my wife, who happens to be black. Some people say black. Some say no, she's West Indian, so she's not black, and she's Asian.
Some say
black.
white.
So you get into all that kind of thing. And I say, well, when the summer comes, she blacks up really well. So I mean, there's no point in going on about that. And we turned up there, and Wally was there with Shane Ritchie, who was just starting his career, and he just said to me, "Peter, get your wife to get me a cup of tea." And I said, "Pardon?" He said, "Well, that's what she does. That's what they do, isn't it?" And that's when I knew he was a bit like that. And then it turned out, well, he's looking after Jim Davison, so there's no real surprise that Jim was of the same ilk. But on that, I'd like to point out one thing I've always said to people.
At least he's consistent.
Yeah, is that
Been
I will
like that
argue
50
to
years.
the
It's
end of
good
my
to know
days.
he has integrity.
Knowing Bernard Manning very well when he was going around.
Great
Bernard
joke
Manning
writer.
was never. Bernard Manning was not a racist. He was a bigot. I know it sounds a bit silly, but
No,
there's
I
a
know
thin
what you
line
mean.
between
I know
it.
what you mean, genuinely.
Bernard had very good Asian and black friends in up north. He just was ignorant in the sense that he never. All he did would go from his gig to a venue, no matter where it was. He used to do the Duncow in Kennington a lot, and then drive all the way back home. He'd never leave his mother on her own. It was like that. But that was his little. Yeah. So when people,
So he was
moved in-
like a pure joke guy who didn't even think
but
about the
if
consequences.
somebody moved next door in his street
Yeah.
and happened to be Asian, then he would see that as an opportunity to say, "Come over here, take our jobs." He wouldn't see the damage he was doing.
Yeah.
He was a bigot that way. He wasn't racist in the sense that, to
He was
be a racist.
oblivious.
Like Jim
to-
Davidson comes out with points which are just racist points. Bernard Manning seems to be like a pure jokesmith who any punchline, no matter how damaging, if it's funny, he'll use.
Yeah,
And don't forget, Bernard didn't need a TV or anything like that. So when he went on that,
What was he like live?
I mean, I had the good honour of meeting Marcus Dow, the black agitator from the back in the Brixton riots and that. And I took him along to the Bernard Manning show, and he laughed his fucking head off.
Yeah, apparently he was an
And
absolute
he-
killer.
Yeah, I went down a bit of a Burning Manning wormhole just on YouTube, and he was relentless. It was
His
you were
joke stuff.
laughing a lot.
And from that era, he's like the one that anyone still like of the pure working men's club one-liner gag guys. He's still probably the
What was
most
his club
known.
called? The Cabaret.
The Embassy.
The Embassy.
Where was that?
In Manchester.
Manchester
I did,
outside, yeah.
and I did a skit, didn't I, about how I was introduced one night. But basically, when you do those places, it's like being a female comedian in the sense you have to work twice as hard because you're from London and you're not funny up there.
Yeah.
And then because it's Manchester and it's a working men's venue, they've earned their money. That's what I would always say to people. Like, once I was down with Eddie Izzard and said to him, "I really would like you to come and do a working men's club to see how you would be able to transfer it over because it wouldn't work."
Did he do it?
No, he doesn't. People.
He does shows in French. I'm
Yeah,
surprised.
no.
that he doesn't do-
What I'm trying to get to say is
Low working men's club.
Yeah, exactly.
there are certain types you can be extremely talented, which without a doubt he is, and that, but some of your comedy and
Just doesn't
comedians can't
translate.
travel to certain venues, no matter how brilliant they are, because the people you're working to are not interested in that style of comedy you're doing,
Yeah, I
the
get that.
angle you're coming from. They've worked hard, especially in Wales. They've worked hard, and the mine's closed. It was very difficult to do comedy if you were from London. Because
They
basically,
just
well, you're all right.
link
You
you
come
to
from
West
down
Coast.
there. You don't give a fuck about us kind of
Preconceptions
thing.
that do.
And I don't know where my money's coming from. And then there was a miners' strike as well, which it was difficult.
Pretty major.
Huh?
Sorry.
No, I mean, it's difficult to go and do comedy, when people were going on strikes and getting beaten up and picketed and the Thatcher days and all that. And then to say, I remember when mainstream first came to alternative comedy in my eyes, and that was during the old Comedy Store, where all you had was you walked in the main entrance down there, you walked up here, the stage was there, just around here was another bar for the comedians and that, and there was a dressing room. All it had was a sink. So if you wanted to go for a piss and you just died on your arse, you had to walk all the way through
Oh God.
and then come back. And
Or piss
Jack
in the
D
sink.
used to be very clever. He used to have a motor scooter, so he used to have a helmet on. So he'd put it on and everybody would see.
Oh, so you just die on your ass, and you have to go walk out.
Through everyone.
If you had to go do another gig, for example, yeah. And as you walk through, somebody would be going really well on stage, and he goes through, you'd all hear, "Hey, you fucking shit," and all this all going down, and the guy up there wouldn't know if it's aimed at him or not.
I mean, I've only done the comedy
Let me
store.
just finish on this
Oh, sorry.
bit. Jo Brand walked in one evening and she said, "Anybody done any Thatcher jokes?" And they all said, yeah, we've done it to death. And he said, all right, I'll have to leave it and cut it out. And I said, welcome to mainstream. On the basis of, when you did the stag and hen nights, there'd be compared two strippers, male and female, whatever, and yourselves. And a comic would come in to do the next half and he'd say, have you done any Irish jokes or have you done any of that kind of stuff? And depending on what the comic was, because funny enough, being half Irish and that, I never used to do all that kind of crap. But people say, oh, I'll leave that out then. So for Joe to turn around and say that, because it was relentless, all the Thatcher stuff was being knocked out, and it's getting easy laughs.
It's the same as like
It's
woke
Trump.
stuff now.
It's the same with Trump, I imagine.
It's the Trump.
Yeah.
Loads of stuff. It's like it's
I've heard
boring.
some Trump stuff, old stuff, regurgitated. I'm sure they've taken it off the tape.
What, your tape?
No, it's just tapes that you can see on there.
Yeah.
Well, and it's probably...
And I've heard plenty of Irish jokes.
I have a
now
question.
said, but without it being an Irishman.
PJ. So I heard on a podcast that in the old clubs there used to be like not this idea of being a writer of your own stuff. You used to have like comedians used to be like just tell street jokes. So much so, apparently, and I'd be wanting to know if this is just another myth. Before gigs, they'd all have to write the jokes they were doing because otherwise they'd just do the same jokes. Because you're going around basically telling, a street joke.
Yeah.
And because the idea of you writing your own stuff wasn't as big back in the day.
Of course it wasn't as big back in the day because...
But was that true that you used to write the jokes you're doing because otherwise someone else will take it?
certain angle, certain places, for example... I've got to try to dig up some of the names. Frank Carson, Mike Reed, Jim Davison, who was just beginning to go, Jimmy Jones. They had a circuit they did.
Yeah.
Jimmy Jones had a pub, which is now Dentists, in, what's that place? The Old Kent Road.
Yeah.
It's called the Dun Cow. And it's about 100 yards up from the Thomas and Beckett gym where Henry Cooper used to train and all that kind of thing. And they would have that little list because they knew each other's acts.
Yeah.
You well off by heart. So it'd be, have you done your stuff about that? Yeah, which one was it? Okay, right. So
But were those acts original or were they street jokes that you
No,
were
they
kind
were-
of like a curator of public jokes, or did you write your own stuff, or was it a mixture? Is what I'm sort of...
I'm not quite sure where your question is leading, but I think the best way of explaining it is that when I started, all you did was you nicked other people's jokes.
This is kind of what I was.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of what I was getting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like
That's all you can-
that's how the change from what I've
didn't-
heard in British comedy was in the 80s when the alternative comedy boom came through. The big alternative buzz was that you wrote distinctive, unique, original material, and that was opposed to the sort
Without
of
a
working
doubt,
men's
yes.
club of sort of you're just sort of like a depository for
Yes, but
street
you've got to
jokes.
understand that was why the early days of comedy, alternative comedy, was absolutely shit. Because there were
Early alternative comedy.
Yeah, it was absolutely. Well, to me, they still call it alternative comedy, don't they?
This is funny because I listened to like Stuart Lee, who's one of my idols. When he talks about alternative comedy in the early days, is this weird thing where he has this immense nostalgia, then describes it and it sounds like shit. He's like, oh, God, comedy's just not what it used to be. I remember back in the day, you know when there was real comedy, when there was this guy who used to like vomit in a bucket, then eat it, and there was the Iceman, the guy who used to just melt a block of ice on stage. Oh, it's
Tony.
brilliant. I'm like...
I still see Tony. now.
Look, Tony, I say the Iceman, oh yeah, Tony. And he talks about them as if it's like, this is what real comedy is. And I'm like... It does sound kind of shit as well. It doesn't sound good.
This is back in a time when queuing was a hobby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it goes towards what you're saying, which is like the early alternative comedy is kind of upheld as these kind of, which they probably were. They were breaking the new mold, but they were
What's in that
also
ice box?
shit.
An ice!
Ice.
A block of ice!
Melt-
Can you imagine having a block
Write
of ice?
some
No,
jokes,
Tony,
mate.
the
Write some
Russians-
fucking
No, this is
jokes.
it. Tony used to bring that block of ice. He used to put it in.
How could he do 3 sets a night? You'd have to refreeze
It's so
it.
funny that you know him as Tony.
Well, how else would I know him?
There's a guy who used to vomit himself. Oh yeah, Pete. Yeah.
I mean, there was brilliant acts around it you wouldn't get now. I mean, you put them on in your club,
Yeah.
but Dave at the Bedford wouldn't take a risk on it because basically he's got his niche. It's like, I don't know. Even I was watching a good program the other day, and going back to racism and ignorance. And
Let's
all
go
this.
back. Let's go back.
No.
Lots of editing.
Like I was going through some old tapes, videotapes, like throwing them out, and I found a jewel which I said to my son, you need to really look at this. But he already knew most of it already. And this was the first black player that played for Tottenham, and then a guy in the First World War who could have played for England, but they wouldn't let him because he was black. You couldn't have that kind of thing. And it was similar things like with the comedy coming along. Basically, you can't have somebody play black for England and that kind of thing. It's the same sense that you couldn't bring back the old comedy now and put it in certain clubs. Like Don wouldn't do it at the Comedy Store. He wouldn't risk it because Dave at the Banana about 5 years ago got an email saying, I came to the comedy the other night and 3 of the acts were really good out of the 4. But it was a day when it used to be all 4 were great. And then another email saying, yet again, 4 white males. Although the night was good, where are the women? Where are the black people?
Well, we don't have any
5
problem with that
years
on this
ago,
pod.
You know, so basically, but
I'll
here
certainly
at your
use
club,
that.
if you
Hang on
wanted,
to
your
that
club is
for
small
dear
enough
life.
and regular. Now, if you end up booking, I mean, basically trying to keep that. You're not looking when you look at your things. You're looking at for whoever phones up. If you've got space, you'll give them, but you're looking for a good show, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're not looking for one female, one black.
Well,
one
I guess the
black.
difference
and
is
And that is there now.
and no.
Actually, you probably-
like
yeah.
yes and
Yeah,
no,
but
because
you're not being dictated to, are you?
no, I'm not being
Use it.
dictated to, but you've got to look at your audience. So, like, if your audience is female comics, will have material that resonates with females more than males will. That's just a fact, as far as I'm concerned.
Say that again. What did you just say?
So, female comics will have material.
blown his mind.
What? Female comics will
Fuck
have
off.
material that will be more relevant to females. So they like it's a statement that it's kind of broad, but I think it's fair enough.
So you are basically saying that Joe Brand back in the day would do genital jokes and she'd do period jokes. No, she didn't necessarily, but other comedians.
Well,
No,
I'm
no,
not
that's what
saying
you're
that.
saying.
Not saying
You're
that.
saying any of that.
You want to bring that. You want to bring back period jokes. Is that what you're saying, mate?
You want to bring that period
Once a month.
People like you.
Robbie Banks is coming out of me
No,
now.
no, no. I think
You
look.
bastard.
No, it may not be period jokes. It may be how their boyfriend is talking to them, or like how they.
No, what he's saying is it's understandable. If you have a diverse audience, they want to see their stories told. And if you've got 4 white men, it gets a bit boring. Even if you have the 4 best white comedians in the world, even I find, I don't know, if they're great killers, you still want a different angle. You want to hear a different experience. You don't want to just hear the same.
So we can't have 4 pun.
But wait a minute,
one-liners.
what happened to the day when you had a comedy show and the club was known to do good comedy, good quality stuff, well worth the value for money? Now, you're having almost this concept of basically 4 white guys coming on. It's like, oh,
There's a
4
balance.
bloody males.
There's
now.
a balance.
The same as, no, but it's the same negativeness of, oh, blimey, 4 white guys. Oh, like, oh, blimey, it's a woman on the bill.
No, I agree.
It's like the
I know,
same.
that's a fair point.
That's a valid point.
That's a very valid
But
point.
I think you need to also look at. So if we talk about comedy back in the day at working men's clubs, well, the majority of the audience there were working men. So
No.
Was it
No,
not?
exactly. That's where it's
Was it
wrong.
wrong?
Because basically,
I mean, I wasn't there. So.
no, well, no, you weren't. That's why I'd remembered you.
Tony.
Working men's clubs at the weekend, basically, there was a place in. It's gone out of my head. But we're talking about the big factories, car factories at Ford's. And
Vauxhall.
yeah,
whatever.
and basically, but they'd have three social clubs in that massive plant. And we're talking about 5,000 people, maybe 10,000 in some cases. Massive plants, and there'd be 3 social clubs that you would do, and it'd be a proper cabaret night of 3 or 4 acts, dancing girls, a group, and all that kind of
So
thing.
what you're trying to say is it was more diverse than we're saying the audience. But I guess what I think me and Mooch are trying to say is that it's like, I think there is a balance to be had, and in the modern world of comedy, it's understandable that it's not acceptable just to put 4 white guys on the bill.
But it
All I'm trying to
happens.
say
But
it
is that
happens.
As a promoter now, what has changed is you don't look at the quality of the show.
That's
You're
the key
thinking of
thing.
I've got to tick the right boxes here. And the days of whether you're funny
PJ,
or
can
not.
I counterpoint to
it's
that?
not- it's-
PJ,
that's
can
what it is.
I? Because I think that's an interesting point. I think there needs to be a balance, because I certainly feel that in TV and setting, there's like this such a focus on diversity that the quality comes second, and you can tell.
Exactly.
But you can find a balance where there's a lot of shit. White. You go to the fucking comedy store and you'll see like 40-year-old white guys talking about DVD players, and you're like, when you've got there's so much talent across the board, and so it feels a bit of a slap in the face. I can imagine.
Yeah, but think of it. Let's take it. John Ward, for example, hasn't opened up the comedy store since the pandemic came. because he hasn't opened up the comedy store because he's got a deal where basically he doesn't have to pay any rent as long as he doesn't put a show on. So he doesn't have to worry about overheads.
Okay.
Not anything apart from the furlough, whatever he's doing. Now, you go to the comedy store, you're paying a lot of money, and your drinks are expensive as well. And he can sell on the name of the comedy store. It may I'm not criticising Don anyway, because without him we wouldn't have got anything going. Jonglers gave nothing to the business. It's just taken out of it. But Don now is so established, apart from the disaster he had in Dubai, when he ran over there, it didn't work at all. He's not going to risk any new comedy. And risk losing the ethos. His comedy store is known for heckling on the Gong Show, and for a good solid compare goes out there, he'll take the piss.
Do you think that's going to last forever though? Because I feel there's a pullback.
Exactly, but the comedy store will probably last forever, long enough.
But surely it needs to adapt a bit, because I think
It's not going to. You're right.
The view of the comedy store for someone from my generation is it's like you go there and you're guaranteed 20 minutes of tight. It's such a brutal thing that if you fuck up, you're not getting another spot. So it's just pure comedy. It's the most. If you type in Comedy Club London, it's the first that comes up. If you're coming to London to see comedy, it's the first place you'll go. But for young comedians, you will see 4 acts who might be razor sharp talking about things that are semi-irrelevant now to our generation, fairly the same stuff regurgitated. And I feel the comedy store, though I respect the commitment to old school club comedy, will need to adapt to survive in what our generation sees as being a good comedy bill.
I would agree with you entirely on that point, that it's not going to. It's probably going to die on its own arse at some time. But at the same time, Don is more or less semi-retired from it. So it's a new wave there. Maybe when it comes back, this sort of thing will happen. They'll see opportunity. But TV is a killer now, and it caused the death of comedy in America. It got some sort of
Has comedy died in America? Would you say comedy's died in America?
It did for a while.
I mean, I think I might be talking about the comedy surge in the 90s. And then,
TV ruined it for a while.
But so this is interesting, because you've been around. I've only been in comedy 5 years. So you've seen it go up and down. And do you see a pattern of how regularly comedy boom and busts? Because when I hear people like Stuart Lee talk about comedy, they say it's basically just a cycle where it just goes up and down and up and down. And do you see much rhyme or reason to it, or do you think it's just...
the whole killing point has been with those, like you said, up and downs, is the introduction of YouTube. You can sit at home and you can dig up, and you don't have to go out at all to enjoy comedy. And the podcasts that have come out, the streaming that's been done by some of the smaller clubs, people are still content to pay $5 just to watch it for a while. That wouldn't last if it was to carry on now.
I don't think. But virtual shows.
People will always find a way around comedy.
Just have to adapt, and there's the big change that's come on the internet. And though you can watch loads of comedy at home, there's now, because of the internet, more people know about stand-up than I think ever. Things like Joe Rogan.
They're far less educated in terms of what going to a live comedy is.
That's true, but what I'd say is what's coming round is that everyone watching Joe Rogan every week, the biggest podcast there's ever been, him constantly talking about the comedy store, him constantly talking about what live comedy is, and just getting comics constantly talking about comedy. There is a fascination with the live experience, and I do think with the internet, having comedians talking about comedy so much, there's so many different comics. I do think now people are going to be desperate for something live that feels real.
Oh, you can't beat live comedy. At all. I mean, that's why when I look back at those old tapes I've got of the American guys and that, and then when they've come over here to go and see them live, Bill Hicks died in his fucking arse the first night he came over here. not the first time he'd been to England, but he came over, and I took him to a club called the Crown and Two Chairmen.
What do you mean you took him? How did you meet Bill Hicks?
Think about me.
Tony introduced him.
Tony, the ice guy.
He loved the ice block.
Yeah.
He called me a bit of a character.
That's real comedy.
But you've got to remember, I came into comedy off my own back, and I'd done everything my own way, kind of thing. So if I see Princess Dianna there back in the day and want to talk to her,
she had a terrible 5.
No, I'm talking to you.
Awful.
I'd go out and talk to her, and if I've got rebuffed, so what? She can only say no problem.
She did badly at the Tunnel
Club. Is that hypothetical, or did you actually? I can never tell with you. Did you meet Princess
Yes.
Di, or is that?
Yes, he asked about Prince Philip.
the
and
Tunnel Club.
And I was going to say no, but I did see Princess Di. And if you let me 30 seconds for this, back in the day, in the West End, there were so many different clubs you could go into,
Yeah.
and you could bullshit your way into it, the 80s especially. And I got involved with an owner of two clubs, the Vauxhall and also Tramps. And he took me one day down the stairs through a cellar of the Vauxhall in King Street, and took me all the way underneath for about 1.5 miles underground. And we came up in this staircase, walked up and came out into the kitchen of Tramps. And as I came in, she was just coming through.
Princess Di?
Yeah, she was being brought in the back door of Tramps.
If you had 20 seconds, you would have gone for it.
I did.
Oh, you did? You can't take your opportunity.
It's a Prince PJ.
And
Yeah.
I just said
The
to her,
People's Prince.
Oh, the People's Prince. Yeah, you could have been the Dodi Fayed. You could have been the.
she was walking out the
rebound.
She was walking out the kitchen. She was obviously leaving to go out the back door. And I
Maybe
said,
she was serving.
And I said, without thinking, because I was doing a comedy that night, I just said, "Oh, died in your ass again, love," without thinking. And she just went, you know that contested range. She actually just like that. And this security guy was like there straight away in case I was going to say anything more, that kind of thing. And I got
You said died in your ass again.
I got a hand put on me like a rod of steel.
Wait, so do you think she saw? Was Tramps a club or a restaurant? What you saying?
Tramps was a big nightclub.
But
They
for
were kind of
comedy,
both.
do they do comedy?
Both. They do.
No.
So with "Died in Your Ass," does that make any sense to her?
No, probably didn't.
So absolutely,
I was
you're a
just
comedian. You just look like a
That
maniac.
came across as a death.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Because if "Died in Your Ass," if you're coming out of a comedy club, maybe that makes sense if you know the jargon of dying on
Of
your ass.
course,
But
but
for
no-
someone in a fucking restaurant,
Exactly.
like in a kitchen of a
You're
gonna
nightclub,
die
saying
on
you
your ass."
died on your ass, it sounds like that sounds horrendous. No wonder the security guard grabbed
It
you.
was just repartee, wasn't it? It was banter. That's a new word, isn't it? Banter.
Yeah, it is banter, but it's also an old word where you can't justify threatening someone by saying it's just banter.
Look,
I know you did.
I was in
but-
comedy mode, and I just.
Oh, listen, you're talking to someone who always says the wrong
And
thing.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's Princess Diana.
we're not the
there, and I
police.
just automatically, she's walking up, big famous person. What are you doing? Come out the back door. Of course, it's.
But what I like
security-wise,
about that
and I
is-
just automatically said, "Oh, you're not died in your ass again."
But what I like is that's a good joke when you know the context. But I just really like this idea of just a random dude in the kitchen saying "die in your ass again" and her having literally no idea what you meant. It must
wonder-
have been
She did.
absolutely meant. She wouldn't know what you meant. She
Of
didn't
course
know
she did,
like this
because she
guy.
went like this.
I'd
Look,
like
if
to
she
think-
went like this.
I'd like to think
It
she
makes
sort
you-
of.
No, she didn't think that she was like, oh, he's talking about me doing a 5 at a comedy club.
she
This
did.
random dude in the
she
kitchen.
lays awake at night thinking about what that meant.
Yeah, she probably did. Yeah.
And what died in my ass?
Died in my ass. This is getting weird. I need a divorce.
Look, we comedians would automatically say whatever's funny to us. We don't give a
Yeah,
fuck whether they get it.
there's
or not,
zero
do we?
filter or care of if or relatability.
I think that's a great story. I like that a lot. I'd love
Are there any other royals you've
No,
threatened?
well, Petula Clark.
Petula Clark.
She was with loyalty. Do you remember her?
No.
No, you see, this is it. I'm talking about people that are dead. You got me here. You got me here 10 years too late.
You just got to siphon through until we find ones we know.
There was in 1995, I think it was. There was a telethon thing done, Children in Need, the first one.
Yep.
It was a live telethon. It ran
Yes.
for 24 hours.
I know about that.
And there was talk about doing English comics versus the rest of the world, sort of banter competition like this.
They do similar stuff like Nigeria versus
Yes,
the
yes,
Caribbean now.
To cut a long story short, basically, I gained a gate crash on it by phoning up and saying, I'm the agent of Robin Banks. He'd like to present for the London lot and the English versus the rest of the world. And I also look after another comedian called
Yeah.
PJ Scott, who would like to represent the rest of the world. And I played them off against each other, went there, got out of the car, took my wife with me, and as I did, everybody rushed towards us, that kind of thing. And I turned around, paid a driver, turned back, and everybody fucked off again. Didn't know who he was. Anyway, I've got the tape of that, and there's me on there with Frank Cass and Tony Blackburn, who was popping up on everything those days, and Shane Ritchie and Mick Miller and all that. We do those two. I do the two jokes, which I said to Malcolm Hardy, can I have your two jokes and do them for the night?
Borrowed a joke, love it.
That just
which
doesn't
is-
happen now. You can't.
It does.
No, you could because
No, it does, but not consensually.
because the joke that Malcolm was doing, I'd heard it years and years and years ago, and I knew it wasn't his. So I did those two, and then I thought, I know what, I'll go home, get changed into my nice red suit. So I'll stand out and I'll come back and I'll try and get on the walk down. So anyway, at the walk down, I managed to come my way back in, kind of thing.
Who is doing security these days?
Oh,
it's just
it's
a
the same with
complete
the Rogan show when I tried.
We're on Wogan.
Joe Rogan.
Joe Wogan.
Anyway, cut long story short, there's this girl standing
Take
there.
on
They're
Joe
all
Rogan.
queuing up to go down. And she says, does anybody know who's in it? I said, follow me, love. And I got all around. And then you'll see it. I got the tape at home, going through all these people on the panel, on the presentation. Again, all dead apart from Jim Davison, Eamon Andrews, all these kind of... right?
Gone but not forgotten.
And then it goes... It starts off with the whole thing singing, we will teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. It's taken from the Coke advert. And it pans along, and it comes to Petula Clark. And then it goes, and there's a guy in a red suit standing there, and it goes past me to Tony Blackburn next to me. I'm in between Tony Blackburn, and it goes along, and then it comes back to me. Who the fuck's he?
So there's a tape of you on the
Yeah, I got
Children
it at
Need
home.
telethon next to royalty in a red suit.
Yeah, sort of. But the thing is, you tell anybody you gate crash a telethon in front of 40 million people, because it was such a big thing and it was live and all that.
Yeah.
And after that, I thought, that's it, I can't top that. I'm retiring from TV work.
And did you ever do TV again?
And it didn't make any difference. I didn't get any work out of it or anything with all that kind of thing we
Surprised me.
did. But it's just doing that gate crashing it. And the same with the Rogan thing. Rogan thing was never any security there. And just at the time when the IRA was setting off bombs everywhere, you could easily have planted anything in there. And I was doing the war.
Are you slagging off the IRA for not
I
being
was
more effective?
I was just starting to try and break
Lazy.
in.
Lazy. I mean,
is
back
true.
in to be fair, back in the 80s, like
To be fair, they did used to ring up as well. So
Yeah,
like, they would
just
plant a
real
bomb.
cuck terror.
And
if you ask
probably
me.
do that on a telethon because
Exactly.
the phone lines are all busy.
I did write to the newspaper, and I nearly got an article to be able to do a short story about how easy it could have been to cause carnage at the telethon.
I
how
think
easy
you
it
already
was to
did
walk
cause
in.
enough carnage.
Yeah.
It's so easy to walk into one. Even now, I tell
wish there was
you,
an IRA
you
bomb
could
at that.
probably walk down now to the South Bank near Waterloo and be able to walk in through the back thing where they do the deliveries and get in quite probably very easy, especially today.
So yeah, this is a
Matt.
message to all terrorists and or all white terrorists
Yes.
or whatever nationality. Work harder. Come on.
Exactly.
Sorry, can I jump in?
You need to put your.
But breaking into places, and what's the weirdest place or any fun place? Horatio, Mooch, Robin, you guys like broken in, kind of slipped in the back
I've
door.
broken into.
I broke into a castle, like stormed the battlements of a castle in my hometown, because in my old hometown.
That is nominative determination.
That really is.
If your
to be
name is
honest.
Horatio,
And I realised that's
you
what I
are
was
going
saying
to
it.
storm a
think
castle.
along with
I was like, okay, here's a cool breaking story. Oh no, it makes me sound even worse than I already am. But yeah, no, just very drunk and managed to scale the battlements. But
I know I'm old, but I've got to be honest. This is the truth, and let me finish what I'm saying before you interrupt. But I did break in to the 500th anniversary of the Battle of Hastings.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was doing a dig gig in Rye, and it's a weekend at
What's
the
the
Battle of Hastings.
anniversary to the Battle of Hastings?
1066. So,
Yeah, I understand
Right.
that, but what is it a reenactment?
500th
well,
anniversary.
think about it. Five,
What in
1,000.
1566? Fucking hell!
Now you're catching on. Now you're getting there.
Did you set that up?
It was.
Yeah, that was a
but
good
you
one.
two
That was a good one.
are a great
Could be.
double act.
Could be.
I think we're going to put you two on the bill together.
Hopefully.
PJ and H.
1066 as against to 2006. That would be how 50 something 1,050 years or something like that.
1066 to 2006 would be 900 years.
Sure.
It was
No.
a big anniversary thing. They're doing
Sure.
thing.
No. Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't know.
I did this gig in Rye.
Pull that up. Don't.
I did this gig in Rye, and then I also did one at Hastings on the Friday, and this was all being reenacted, the battle on the Sunday, and I
They
was
did comedy anywhere back then.
Yeah.
So they literally did comedy anywhere.
Yeah.
Is it so? What act did you have? Was it the ice melting block then?
Stop showing your ageism.
Never. Go on.
I
Sorry.
can tell you a true story about Tony later on if you want. But and Steve Murray, he was brilliant comedian. Patrick Marber, he's a playwright now. And
I think I've heard of him.
yes, brilliant act he had. You see, I've got videos of people that with full heads of hair that you know now. That was the original comedy. The Crisis
Just
Twins and
follicles.
all that.
Got Harry Hill.
Bill Bailey as part of the Rubber Bush.
Dreadlocks. Al Murray with an afro.
Anyway, Battle of Hastings, I couldn't get in. They wouldn't let anybody in at all, and it was all cordoned off. And then I saw these runners, and I had my bike with me, so I followed the runners, and then I saw a gap in the woods, and I forgot how old I was, so I thought I'll get in through the woods. And there's me with a bloody bike, struggling over barbed wire fences. Eventually, I managed to get to a gap, and as I got through, these security was just walking up, and I just... How I got away with it, I'll never know. I just suddenly found myself saying, "What you lot now? How long are you going to be here? I want you off my farm." And the guy just said, "I'll be going in about 4 hours, so we'll be knocking it." I said, "All right, then, well, hurry up and get off of here." And I thought, how the fuck did they fall for this? I've got a bike with me. Climbing out of a wood, but I managed to get in for free, and I saw the whole reenactment. And I just don't like people turning around and being snotty and telling you can't do this, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Why?
How do you like battle? I've never been to a battle reenactment. I don't know. How is it as a spectacle?
What are they like as an audience?
There's a lot of neck.
It's actually it's quite disappointing. I mean, like if you go to
So I'd imagine it's a lot of fun for them. I highly doubt.
Arundel Castle do a brilliant one
like
every
theatre.
year, and it's great. You go there, and after about half an hour, it doesn't mean anything to you. It's because we've got this great English attitude. If somebody walked down the road in chainmail clanking a sword, we wouldn't look twice at them if they're walking down Regent High Street.
I mean, how long did battles last back in the day?
Yeah, because it seemed to be anywhere from like 3 hours to 3 weeks.
Well, yeah, because don't forget they had to go off and have little enactments and battles just to get through.
We're talking about real ones.
Yeah, like a real battle. I've been watching a lot of the Vikings, and it seems like I don't think people's cardio was that good back then.
Absolutely mental how
You'd just be shattered after your third sort of beheading.
With the Battle of Hastings, the Vikings realised Battle of Hastings was happening. They had to run from around, like up north near Manchester area. They ran back. They ran from Manchester, basically, well, not from the other side, all from the north, just down to Hastings. I remember watching a documentary and they just showed them running down, and they just, as if that was just like...
Just a light
Just
jog.
a way of getting round the country, just run
Just
down
a quick
the whole
jog
country.
to Bognor.
To Bognor, exactly.
Apparently, France won the longest battle.
With the 100 Years' War, I don't think.
300 days, fucking...
Huh?
Is that World War One? There's a lot of stop and start for those ones, though, isn't it?
300 days, 300-day long battle. Estimated 80,000 soldiers dead, wounded, or missing.
What was it
Is that
called?
That's 800,000, I think. Is that 80?
Sorry, 800,000.
Yeah, there's a big...
Jesus.
Who was that against then?
Probably us.
No, it was Germans, wasn't it? It was World War One.
Oh, World War One. What caused Verdun to be the longest
No, the
battle?
300 days battle. What was that one? Who were they?
Verdun.
Pretty hard
Who?
to know when a battle started and a battle ended.
But who was fighting who?
It was
I think
World
the
War One.
French-
It was World War One.
French
Huh?
and
French-German. World War One.
is it Prussians?
Back then, it probably was, yeah.
I don't know.
So
Do you remember who was?
I'm just trying to remember who was on the bill.
a question for you, PJ, though. Who do you think you've seen of your whole time do
The best one.
Who's that's
Tommy
one. winner.
Cooper, without a doubt.
Tommy Cooper. So live, who you thought out of anyone you've seen murdered a room the hardest?
Well, I had the good fortune to work with him for a week in Watford at a club called Bailey's, which was a cabaret, a massive place, 2,000 people,
Sure.
and that, 2 floors, and then disco at the end, like a proper nightclub it turned into. And yeah, he was a very difficult man to work. Don't forget, I only talked about a week, so I only literally see him for maybe 10 minutes each night beforehand for just to go through things. And he was on the whiskey by then.
Oh,
I drink
really?
about a bottle a day, more or less.
Really?
But we're talking about people were allowed in with kids to see him. 8 o'clock.
Was Tommy Cooper dirty?
No. Never swore in his life. Never told a
Yeah, I was
dirty
going to.
joke
Oh,
in his life.
I thought that was the thing.
I thought
Like
that's the
you were
point
a
you're
bit
making.
shocked at that kids were allowed to go in, but yeah, it's
No, it's a personality. As a person, he was a bastard.
Really?
He was
How so?
He was so focused on what he's doing. He had no idea of table manners in terms of and be polite to people. It was just grunt kind of thing.
Right.
But he did this thing the first night, and you probably heard it before, maybe if not. But it's actually true. He did it with me. I put me on, mate, and just say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Cooper," off stage on the mic, kind of thing. And I did this, and nothing. He wasn't there. He was supposed to be there with me, and he was gone. And carried on. And what he'd done, he set up another mic somewhere else, kind of thing. And this went on, and I didn't know what to do. So I'm just saying, "Ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Cooper," where the fuck is he, kind of thing. And then another minute went by, and people are getting restless now, a little bit. And then you hear this voice, "Oh, right, I'm on." And you hear the door open and shut, and then he goes, "Fuck me, I'm in the cupboard." But he doesn't say "fuck me," he says, "Shit, I'm in the wrong day." And then he goes, "What should I do?" And then he tells a joke, like as if on the radio.
Off stage.
Off
yeah.
stage.
And then he tells a joke. He says, "Yeah, I'll get him." And the people are now laughing. They've heard the joke.
yeah.
And they're laughing out in the 2,000-seat capacity room. And kids are there, and you hear the odd kid wailing, kind of thing. Because that's the class of man. He could perform with anybody. And
Didn't even need to be on stage.
and then I go, "Ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Cooper," and he goes behind me and goes, "All right, just do it one more time, son." And he's a big man, so I'm looking at him like that. And then curtains go, electric curtains open and all that. We had electricity in those days as well, early. And he walks on stage, he goes, "Whoa," and then starts a joke. And they start laughing a bit. And he finishes the punchline. And they've heard it 5 minutes before. And they still laugh their fucking heads off. And that's why I always say that when Bird and Manning and that lot used to come in and write jokes down and see if anybody... when I've run the odd comedy club like at the Bedford and that, and I've had a newish act go on, and he tried a joke and it hasn't worked and he's puzzled, I've put him on after the second half and told him to do that same joke again and it will work. And to prove it, I've then gone on and told a joke, and then I've told that joke 3 minutes later again, and it's still got a laugh, to say that you can get away with it. And that all come from Tommy Cooper, watching him do that kind of thing. And that's the kind of guy he was.
So
But
wait,
he
sorry,
would
just
bring, he would bring the place down in uproar. And when he got anybody on stage, which he used to do quite a lot, didn't do on TV shows, he would never demean them in any shape or form. That was the difference.
It's just off stage.
He could be an arsehole off stage, but on stage he was
very good.
total professional. He knew the ins and outs of comedy and how to get along and how to milk it. And
I mean, he died on stage, right? That was
he died on stage.
the
Jimmy
most
Talbot
honourable way
once
to
told me
go.
how it felt he was comparing that night at London Palladium.
Really?
And we've got our own little miniature of that, haven't we? Because there's a guy called Andrew Bird who I helped develop.
Yeah.
He's got his own club up somewhere where he lives now, and Cognito died there.
Yeah.
On stage?
Yeah,
Incognito
in a
died
chair.
on stage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people
He
weren't
just
sure.
sat-
He just collapsed on stage, and
He didn't
people
come
weren't
Same
sure if it was
thing.
an
It's
accident.
like the same
he just
thing.
sat down and went, "Ugh, I'm too old for this," or something like that. And then anybody thought again he was doing a piss take of Tommy Cooper, but he died.
Dying. Well, I mean, just
Do you think he
disease.
tried to die on
Yeah.
stage?
the romance of dying to a applause break is quite something. Tommy Cooper. You look at the clip of Tommy Cooper dying.
I think
on stage.
Mussolini did as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what they have in common. But you see him dying, he's dying to a round of applause.
But the reason I say Tommy is because he could perform to any kind of audience whatsoever of all ages. And
he
on,
ever go dirty?
on one of those nights there, you would say that he would performing at least one of those nights to a 3-generation audience. How many comedians can do that?
Yeah.
All the good ones we've got around now, could they actually make 10-year-olds laugh? I've seen a couple of kids come when Harry Hill has done the Bedford, the Banana. A couple of kids come to see him about 11 or 12,
Yeah,
He's
Harry
the only
Hill's
one
very
nearest to
killer.
it that I've seen.
Yeah, apparently Harry Hill, because Harry Hill has quite a tacky TV show, and a lot of people from my generation would just look at him as being this kind of quite like tacky TV guy. But apparently live, he's extraordinary, is what I've heard.
And when I last saw him at the Bedford, I hadn't seen him for a while, so he changed his stuff and all that. And
Does he still have the collar?
yeah, okay. I mean, this is it.
That's his. He's a doctor.
Yeah, he's
Yes, he was a
incredibly
doctor.
smart man, apparently.
How long have we-
I'm
how
desperate
long
for a
have we been going?
piss. Do you mind if I take a little break?
Scott?
1:30.
1:30.
I need to go to the toilet.
Let
almost.
just pause it for a sec, and then we'll
Run
go.
to the
We'll have a
You
little
get
break.
by?
Be right back.
Oh.
Can I got time to get a pint?
Yeah, I'll go grab another one.
Yeah? Give me a stand in, please.
And we're back.
We are back.
So you were talking about MCs, crowd work, and the Gong Show. That's what you were saying.
No. I'm talking about your proper weekend show. It seems to be packaged with the deal. Compare comes on, takes the piss out of the audience for the first 10 minutes, gets them all warmed up. Everybody in the third, fourth, fifth row are laughing their heads off because it's not them that's being picked on. The people at the front have had their moment of fame because that's why they seem to sit there, as far as I can see, and take it. And I have a feeling it's a part of the package in the deal. And I think that's proven by the fact that when the Gong Show first started, which was the first opening night at the Comedy Store, back in the day, because I was there for the opening night, and it's in the Comedy Store book, and the person who wrote it has even mentioned.
You were at the first Gong Show?
Huh?
You were the first King Gong?
Can I just say this, that Tom Ward has asked me to come back to do the Gong Show once in the past, and I said no, he did enough for my career the first time around. And that is that Alexis Sale introduced me. There was me, Leslie Crowther and Colin Crompton, which are all, again, people you don't know, about famous on TV, and we were doing the Talk of the Town. And I was the compere, and they were performing. And we were invited along to the Comedy Store opening night up above the Paul Raymond's Review Bar. Alexi was comparing. Don and, not Kim Keeney, but Pete Rosengard, who was co-founder of the Comedy Store, asked us to go on first as the old ones, that kind of thing. The other two were more clever than me. They didn't draw the short straw. I said I'd go up. Now, you've got to understand, we were going to do a show at the Talk of the Town, so I was dressed in cummerbund, fitted shirt, dicky bow, velvet brocade jacket, because that's what a compere wore in those days. I got up. Alexi was there. Said, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," that kind of thing. Here's our first act on the Gong Show. Please welcome up PJ Scott. I walked up, and as soon as I got the mic like that, Alexi gonged me off. Which is fair enough, because I'm old and I fell into it like a trap.
So
I opened up the Gong
like,
Show
yeah.
and was the first one to be gonged off, and the one in the shortest time. Now, that was okay. And that Gong Show was okay because it was down to the audience. That was Alexi just getting his point across. But it was down to the audience to turn around and boo people or something, and then he would gong them off when he think had enough. But then, since then, the Gong Show developed, but now it's bitter and gladiatorial, and I've got videos of them, and it's going really well, and the comedians. And don't forget, these are people starting out, and this is where I disagree with it entirely. And 3 of them have gone really well and got through, and then the compere goes on, and he goes, "Judges, you've got those cards for a reason, use them." So that means the next person coming on has got no fucking chance of getting through, and they might travel miles and miles. And
Well, I think everyone knows the deal when they go into it.
they don't
Well, no, they don't.
necessarily.
Okay,
That's
well, I
what
got
I'm
a
saying.
story
And
about
then
that.
what happens is it's got worse and worse and more gladiatorial. So it's a bit pointless doing it because
I mean,
Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's the healthiest way to progress in comedy, but I do think that there is a need for it. It's kind of almost a similar sort of vein to a roast battle. You know what you're going in for.
fine, but the roast battle is not interrupted or.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I've had terrible
The
shows.
compere actually, I've seen the compere. They actually turn around and interrupt the act, and of course it breaks up the flow for them.
What's your story about?
Well, so I've done the Gong Show once, and it kind of goes into what you were saying. And like, to be fair, you do sign up for it, but the kind of people there, it is like the gutter of society. Who ends up there? It's like these kind of guys with these kind of glasses, short back and sides, this kind of like
No
Ben
moustache.
Sherman shirts, just these kind of like. It was an awful crowd. So much so that I'd just been on 8 Shit, bombed. Then 2 acts after me, a guy with clear cerebral palsy, like properly, like you could physically tell that he was physically and mentally disabled, limps up on stage,
Wins.
and before he even says something, someone screams at him, "You disabled cunt." Like, just screams at them. He's completely so shocked and traumatized that he can't get a word out. 3 cards, get him off. Everyone's laughing. I then leave.
What did the compere say? Who was the compere?
The compere was Laura Lex, And I think she'd been getting a lot of sexist comments throughout the evening, so she was turning on the audience as well. But
I've never seen it that bad.
But no, but he got kicked off. I'm leaving because I'm leaving anyway because I've been gone. I'm not going to stay in this fucking hellhole. And then he's outside trying to sue the club. He's in a wheelchair because he
Are we talking about the person
I
heckling?
mean, no,
The
this
person
is
heckling?
No. This is the person who was heckled on stage. The guy who was called to say, "Well, so he'd gone on stage with two stilts, yeah. And then he's in a wheelchair. And then I speak to him like, I'm so sorry about what happened. I find out he's on his own. He's come from Durham, okay? And then suddenly he's like, I have no way to get back. So I have to help this guy get back to Victoria Coach Station to get an 8-hour bus back to Durham. And it's because he's typed in London Comedy Night. I think he did a couple of open mics in Durham and had done fairly well or something. And he typed in London Comedy Night. And the first thing that comes up is Gong Show. Comedy store, and that's what he thought. He'd come down just for that night.
How did you get all this out of him when he's got cerebral palsy? That's to take him ages. Tell you.
I mean, to be honest, I don't know if it was cerebral palsy. It could have been Down syndrome.
They are quite different.
I'm not well versed in it.
Isn't he still working there? What's his name?
But
aren't you talking about what's it?
Adam Bright?
No. Adam, yeah, it's our friend Adam Bright.
Bright.
That's how I met Adam Bright. No.
The other guy.
No. He's not.
You're talking about
Tim Renkamp.
Tim Renkamp.
No. He's not a famous. Trust me.
No, but it sounds like that sort of thing.
No.
More than one person
it's not
has
done.
Just writing you.
More
up.
than one person has cerebral palsy, I think.
Rosie Jones.
Did you do Gong Show?
I have done the Gong Show.
How did yours go?
I've done it twice. Once when I was just pissed and went up and actually did all right. Then I got to like 3 minutes before someone shouted out in the middle of a punch, just before I delivered a punchline. And then I tried to say the punchline. That's the error I made. And then the second time I had a lot of friends came and it didn't go well, 2 minutes or something like that.
I'm going to try and go back, but it is absolutely... And it's also the only way you can get onto the Comedy Store, really, because they don't believe in anything but how well you do it.
You see, it might change now, because don't forget, John's not involved anymore as such. Simon, I think, is the one who picks and chooses. So actually, I'm going to give Simon a ring later on. I think I'd like to do, swan song kind of thing, and just say to him, Simon, I'll send you this stuff. I want to do this stuff I did 30 years ago when I first did the Comedy Store. And can I take out 5 minutes of that 20-minute spot I did and see if it'll still work today, and I'll do it on the Gong Show. But I understand I'm doing it purely
Dog thinks someone's
just
at the
to
door.
see if it will travel through time kind of thing.
I mean, I think people at the Comedy Store are still doing sets from 30 years ago, to be honest.
This is sounding bitter. The Comedy Store is pretty solid.
Yeah.
This is why you're not allowed.
I'm trying to create a counterpoint to it. It is the Comedy Store.
I would update your material, but I haven't seen what it was 20 years ago. So let's see the tapes. And I'll give my honest advice, even though you didn't ask for it. I feel like I'm in
this
must be what it's like for a female comic coming off stage. I'll give you my advice.
Yeah.
It'd be great if you could stitch some of the tapes you've got. You'll have to stitch them.
I don't think we're going to get it done by Friday.
One of them I've done in your show, that realising, because this is it, you look at it, you think, fucking hell, I was doing that 30 years ago and I'm still doing it now, because it's a timeless gag that can travel through any time. And that's what you learnt when you first started changing. Don't forget, I've come from mainstream.
Ice melts and it's hilarious.
Bring it back.
Come on, Tony. Who is Tony?
Tony Burgess, I think his name was, or Tony. He was a good friend of a guy called Ricky Diamond, who...
These are wicked names. Tony Burgess,
exactly,
Ricky Diamond.
You could literally, it's like auto-generated old comedy names.
Tony Blackburn.
Ricky Diamond got a job, signed up for Playtent, which was the original Blue Pizza on the BBC children's programme.
Yeah.
And the next week, all across the news of the world, Ricky Diamond, porn star.
Is he related to Dustin Diamond, who was Screech from Saved by the Bell, who... tragically passed away.
No, just to throw a bit of sleaze here, I didn't know until they actually put up his history that the rapist, sexy rapist, War Boys.
The sexy rapist?
The taxi rapist.
Oh, Taxi.
Taxi.
Sorry. That changes it very differently.
They actually said
him a
he used to
compliment.
work as a male stripper. I can't remember what he's called himself. And I realised I'd worked with him countless number of times.
Is this a famous case, the taxi rapist?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Shame.
When was this happened?
What's the name? Boris Johnson's girlfriend.
1866. Oh, Carrie
one of his
Simmons.
victims, she got out of it. He tried to.
I think I do know
and
about
then
this.
She went through his court to appeal that he starts longer inside, but they were putting him up for early release.
And you knew him?
But I only knew him as a stripper.
Or a driver?
No, never knew.
Didn't know him as a raper.
Yeah.
But obviously he wasn't doing it then because he retired from stripping. Obviously, like anything else.
Oh, stripping. Okay.
Yeah.
It used to be called Bend Over.
Oh, the porn star, Bend Over.
I used to work with him, and he used to be
Ben Dover.
Yeah.
Like the name Ben Dover.
Yeah, he was a porn star. I used to remember him from the 10 minutes.
Bend Over. Sorry.
that
Bend Over
that's
is
a great
just
name.
to clarify.
He used to
Bend
be-
Over is not the taxi rapist.
No, that's somebody War
John-
Boys.
John
Can't remember his
War
first name.
Ben Dover
Ben
is
Dover
an
used to do a
extraordinary
strip
pod
show
name.
as
That
Rod-
is a
as Rod
great
Ben
pod
Dover
name.
used to do as strip as Rod Stewart. So do you think I'm sexy? And then he set up an agency with Lindsay Drew. Do porns. But can I clarify one thing here to my public, by the way? I was never a porn star. I wrote the script for Electric Blue 27, 28, 29 and 30, and I performed in them with Princess Diana lookalike, but I never entered into any woman whatsoever in any shape or form.
That's
but
official.
I did work as a bouncer one night where I had to juggle their breasts to see if they were worthy of letting into the club. And I wrote that script myself because I was middle-aged and I needed the money.
Did it sell?
And it sold, yeah. I can't get hold of the tapes. I'd love to get hold of it.
So it was directed and
Because I was
stuff.
looking good in that as well.
I
Good
bet you
looking
were.
those days,
So do you get accused a lot of being a porn star?
And
A
then,
lot of people say, you're a porn star, right?
Yep.
And you have to say,
No.
I'm
I
not.
think
I'm
when
the
you've got your
humble-
hair
exactly.
down.
No. Yeah.
I
When
feel
I
I've
had
seen
my
you in a
size,
couple of
everybody used to
videos.
call me Ron Jeremy.
He's speaking of rapists. He's being.
Is he?
He's
Well,
had a
this is it.
slew of cases that have been thrown. He's currently in lockup.
Wow.
That's a bit of a fall from grace.
Yeah, exactly. Who would have thought, of all people, Ron Jeremy? Even the greats.
But can I just say, when you first started on this circuit, a lot of it was hypocritical, a lot of it was two-faced, but at the same time, it was a wonderful time, and I'm really, really pleased to be able to see, even now, think back and see, and being honoured to see so many big famous stars make it, but being there at the early days when they started and seeing how they progressed and how a few have fallen by the wayside and forgotten their roots and that. And if I met them now, it would be like, oh, hello, PJ, what are you doing here? Because I remember them when they were shit. And they're not prepared to accept that. They don't want to be reminded of that. And I'm not going to remind them, but it's just a trip down memory lane.
We will bring it up on a podcast though. And
But the one
name
thing
some
that
names?
got me was, like you said, you don't want to book that PJ. He's a porn star. All that just because of
if anything,
there's a lot of gossip going around. And what people didn't realise and still don't
get the same
is
problem.
this circuit is very, very small. And any rumours that go
very
around,
small.
you end up hearing it from somebody that said that. And I know for a fact there's people out there who go, oh, you're that PJ. And I go, what do you mean that PJ? Things I've heard
Porn
about
star
you,
PJ?
mate.
Porn star
and
PJ.
So you just wonder how much of it's stuck. Because like mud sticks, doesn't it?
It doesn't. It's a very small circuit, even though it feels big.
I only got you on this podcast because I thought you were a porn
yeah,
star.
exactly. We might
So-
have to end now.
It's kind of
Yeah, it's kind of
thick. It works
disappointing.
both ways.
I mean, I've always thought about that. It's like, if you are looking for money, why wouldn't you write a porn? If you're not able to get into it, it feels like an easy thing to
My
write.
dad wrote a porno. It's probably the highest grossing porno script ever.
But the dad, it was out of the dad's failure to write a porno, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it
but
wasn't a
he
successful
still-
porno.
he
The
stole-
podcast about his failure was
Listen,
successful.
I'm talking
Money's
about results, not
Yeah, exactly.
not desired results, but he's got
Numbers don't
results.
lie.
It's like that famous
thing
film. What's the worst film ever made?
The Room.
The Room, and is now turning a generous profit
Yeah, flipping over a lot.
just
of cash.
from being so bad. And that's how I like to look at my comedy. Mm-hmm. If it's so bad,
Do you think you
it
can be
will
the Room of stand-up comedy?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
I've always said that you ask somebody, and I've proven it
Thank you.
many a time in a live show, or just turning around and saying to people, by the way, back in the day at the comedy store, any of you ever been to a comedy show before at the comedy store? Yeah, and people go, yeah. I say, how long ago? Last year, even last month. Yeah, who was on? Oh, I can't remember. And they might mention one or two names, and they're all good on that. But then you actually say to them, anybody been to a show and they go, yeah, and you say, what's that? And they would say, oh, so-and-so was shit. You say, what was his name? They'll remember the name. People will remember the name of a comedian they've seen who was shit. They won't remember the name of somebody who was fucking brilliant. So it pays to be shit, like he said.
Do you think there's science to that?
Huh?
Yeah, I think it's the same as like negative news. Everyone wants to hear about.
Yeah, but it is
bad
implying that aim is to be people to to remember who you are.
I think
as opposed to
it's a level of how shit you are.
exactly.
So
But-
you take away from this today, this podcast,
Hopefully,
you're gonna
this
meet some-
podcast is so bad that everyone will remember on.
That is what I'm working on.
Yeah.
It's where I'm heading for this.
What you was
And
gonna
don't
say.
forget that basically at the end of this night, you'll remember this for the rest of your lives because you met somebody who could refer to the Iceman as just Tony.
That's
true.
Tony.
And-
That's the title of this pod.
And the thing about Tony is he would take this block of ice everywhere with him. And it,
Did he have a fucking little freeze
No,
box?
Yes, he did. That's the whole point. A very antiquated looking thing. And
I mean, that
but
is quite
he would
fun,
take
to be
it
fair.
and he'd have a blowtorch and everything with him to try and get it sort of thing. But he would the whole point of the act was it never got melted. So everybody knew that it was never going to get melted.
How do you keep
But
it cold?
they would go along to see him and they would sit there and they would go afterwards and go, oh, you should have seen him last week at the Tunnel Club. He got it down to smaller than that. But nobody could ever claim, yeah, I've seen it melted.
Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I feel we have to end it there. We've been going quite a while, and I've got another vlog that we need to film. Where can people find you, Horatio?
At Horatio_Gould on Instagram and Horatio Gould Comedy on TikTok. Those are kind of the main things.
What's your TikTok, PJ?
You can't find me anywhere.
We can't find Where can
find
people
me.
find you?
You can get me on comedy_pit at
VHS.
hotmail.com and that'll do for the moment.
Anyway.
Okay.
Sorry, comedy underscore.
Pit at hotmail.com.
That if you want
My
any
phone
clip-
number is
My name is Mooch. You can find me at Moochabout on all social media. This has been episode 5 of the Vauxhall Comedy Club podcast.
Been a pleasure.
Horatio, PJ, thank you very much.
and do support this place because it's got a new breed of new comics coming along and I found 3 or 4 that are already on their way now. So keep supporting this place.
Thank you. Cool. That's a wrap.